Hi, my name is Ashlee. I'm an elementary educator here at the schoolhouse, and today we're going to talk about the story of the black strip. The black strip is typically told after the coming of the universe and the timeline of life, and we want to ask our learners how long they think all of that took. We're going to wait a decent amount of time for them to have been able to explore follow-up works to the coming of the universe and to the timeline of life, and for them to really take that in and enjoy the information that they've received at that point. And then we take out the black strip. This is supposed to be a demonstrative work. We're trying to impart a visual representation of the length of time it took for the earth to be prepared for human beings. And one of the key points that comes from this story is just how little impact and how little time the human beings have had on the earth compared to everything else that has happened before us. It reminds us how small we actually are and how much there is to be grateful for that came before us so that we can be living the life that we have right now. So it's about 30 meters long, and we're going to start the story by going through some of the major points of the coming of the universe. And we're going to talk about how the particles were heating and cooling and falling and rising. And we're going to move our black strip. And the crust of the earth is starting to harden after so much time of cooling and cooling and cooling. And we're just moving our black strip down. As you're walking with the black strip, I'm just going to pause the story here for a second. You are going to be standing and walking with the learners instructed to follow you. So you're going to actually be unrolling it as you walk backwards, and the learners are just walking next to you and listening to the story. So there's a while where you're kind of just repeating the same thing. It's cooling and it's cooling and it's cooling, and finally there's water on the earth. And we can now talk about the coming of life story, where the sun is disappointed to find that the water on her beautiful daughter, the earth, is looking dirty. And life came about to solve that problem. And it starts with these little tiny jelly-like creatures that are floating around and eating the particles of salt and sediment that have muddied the waters. And we're going to keep moving. And eventually, the cells decided to work together. So now instead of single-celled organisms, we have multicellular organisms. And then not only did the cells work together, but they all were assigned specific jobs, like eating and getting rid of waste and reproducing. So now we have animals with organs. We have our fish, eventually with their backbones. And the fish are all different types of experiments. Some fish have tails on top, some fish have teeth outside of their body and inside of their body. And all of these experiments are swimming all over the ocean, eating and reproducing and getting rid of waste. So about 25 meters in, we can start talking about how there's plants on land and how some fish have decided that they don't want to be stuck in the water anymore. There was a time where the earth was really hot and water started to evaporate and small pools were formed where fish started to get trapped. And some of these fish decided to crawl out of the water. So we give them this really descriptive imagery of fish becoming amphibians. And eventually the amphibians decided that they did not want to be stuck having to return to the water. They wanted more freedom to discover the land, right? So now we have our reptiles, because the amphibians built armor around their skin so that they don't need to stay moist in the water. And we can talk about the age of the dinosaurs. And we're going to keep moving. Let's make a noise over here. We're going to keep moving and moving backwards. And the dinosaurs grew to ginormous sizes. And they pretty much took over the earth. And the other types of animals, especially the animals with fur and the animals with feathers, had to stay on the fringes of the environment, mostly where it was really cold. And that's why some of their adaptations, like having fur and feathers, came to be, because they were really scared of the giant dinosaurs. But eventually, something happened, and the dinosaurs were no more. And after that happened, the very special animals that took care of their young, that held their babies in their bellies, or had eggs with their babies that they would keep in a nest and keep safe, and gave them milk from their bodies, these animals with fur and with feathers are the birds and the mammals. And now we're starting to enter the age of mammals. And mammals started to grow to really, really large sizes. And there was a period of time where these mammals completely took over. And more time passed, and eventually these mammals started to change. And one very special mammal came into creation, and that is our human beings. And right at the very end of this strip, you can either have red or you can have a white piece. We just want it to be easily distinguishable from the rest of the strip, is our white line. This is going to be all of the time that the human beings have been on Earth. And when I tell this story, I usually like to emphasize that we're talking about the earliest human beings that lived in caves and were hunters and gatherers, to the very first farmers, to the first ancient civilizations that came into being, and all the way through our history, the 13 colonies, and we're moving further in time to right now. So everything that has happened in human history fits into this tiny little strip. And the rest of it is before we even existed. And we give our learners a moment to look at this. Depending on the size of your group, how many learners you have in your class, sometimes it's fun to let them walk the length or run the length, and they can go back and forth and just really take in how much time it took for the Earth to be ready for human beings, and how much time the human beings have spent on the Earth, and what little impact really we've had on the Earth if we look at all of the other things that came before us. And we want to end with a sense of gratitude and thankfulness for everything that happened before us, and all of the amazing coincidences and science that happened to bring us into being, and all of the incredible developments that human beings, once they did come into being, have created to help us be where we are right now. So once we're finished, you can have a learner or a couple of learners roll it back up. This is also a good opportunity to remind our learners about how to take care of our environment. And before we start walking with the strip, it's good to remind your learners not to step on it, and to be careful and mindful as they're walking, that they're giving each other space and that they're giving the material space. And when it's rolled up, it's going to be rolled up nice and neat, and we'll put it away. And that's the Black Strip story. Here at the Schoolhouse, we appreciate you, our learners, our parents, and our community. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.